When browsing the FNAF tab on GameJolt to find a new game to play, there has always been one game that stood out to me a lot, and that was Jolly 4. Boasting extremely cool animatronic designs, amazing graphics, and a really well animated announcement trailer, Jolly 4 was shaping up to be one of the most well produced fan games the community has ever seen. But recently I stumbled across it again when I got the idea to go back and play the previous Jolly games in the series and give you guys my honest opinions on each one, in preparation for the release of Jolly 4. So that's exactly what I did. I took it upon myself to play Jolly 1, 2, 3 Chapter 1, and 3 Chapter 2. So without further ado, let's start this series review off with the game that started it all, Jolly 1. But before we do that, let me tell you guys about today's sponsor, Monster Legends. Monster Legends is a free-to-play mobile game that is available on all devices. There are over 900 monsters in the game with different elements and rarities for you to use when building your very own monster empire. And if that wasn't enough already, there are also new monsters coming out every single week. The game even lets you breed monsters of different elements and rarities to get eggs of completely new species. And once you have one of these eggs, you are able to hatch a new baby monster. You can then feed this baby monster to evolve, level them up, and boost their powers with runes, relics, and talents. You are also able to create a team and challenge your friends or other monster masters in battles. In these battles, you can conquer trophies, win rewards, and reach the top leagues. One of the unique features in this game is the YouTuber Island, where you can find monsters created in collaboration with some of the biggest YouTubers. Find your favorite YouTubers, check out their monsters and awesome skills they chose for them, and put them to the test. Download the game now using my link in the description or the QR code, and you will get a special free starter pack of 50,000 food, 300,000 gold, 10 gems, and the epic monster Kaori. Thank you so much Monster Legends for sponsoring. Now let's get back to the video. Jolly 1 was released back in 2016 and was developed by Ivan G. I'm gonna start by talking about the gameplay before I jump over to talking about the story and visuals. Now in terms of gameplay, this game does not do a whole lot and relies heavily on features from previous FNAF games. In Jolly 1, you are a night guard and you are tasked with surviving till 6 AM while fighting off Jolly and the rest of the animatronics. You are placed in an office that is on a lower floor from where the animatronics are located, and you have a window in front of you with a light and a door to your right. You are also equipped with a camera that is able to give you a view of not only the vents leading into your office, but also the entire second floor of the restaurant where all of the animatronics are located. We are also able to close these vents on the left to prevent these two animatronics, who go by the names of Maxie and George, from entering the vents. And we are also given this charging panel on our right, which lets us take power from this generator and put it in our own pool of power. There is also a brand new gameplay feature that this game invents, which is the wire mechanic. And while it is a new mechanic, it does take a lot of cues from how the music box worked in FNAF 2. Basically, there are 4 wires connected to the puppet, and randomly throughout the night the wires will go out and you will need to go to the camera they are on and click on them to repair them. It takes a few seconds to repair it, and that usually gives the animatronics a chance to make a move. For example, during my runs, it would sometimes give Jolly enough time to make it down the elevator and onto the floor with my office. Speaking of the elevator mechanic essentially works like this. The animatronics need to either go through the vents or down the elevator to get onto the same floor as your office. Maxie and George are the only ones who are able to go through the vents, therefore all the other animatronics will take the elevator. The way we can prevent this is by sending the elevator back up whenever the animatronics ride it down to our floor, using this button on its respective camera. One thing I really like about this feature is that there is this ding sound that plays every time the elevator has gone up or down, and this audio cue allows us to know when the animatronics are moving without having to check the cameras. As for the other animatronics in the game, they will come through the vent and appear in this window. If in this window, you will need to flash them and make sure the light remains on them in order to keep them away. This gameplay mechanic felt extremely glitchy, however, and I had died countless times even though I was flashing the animatronics, so I'm not really sure what I was doing wrong here, and the game doesn't really explain everything to you in the greatest manner either, but I will get back into that later on. If an animatronic is able to make it down the elevator and into the bottom floor, you will need to keep an eye on them in your cameras and close the door before they make it into your office. Since there is no light on the door like in Five Nights at Freddy's 1, you will need to solely keep track of him through the cameras and won't be able to see him when he's peeking through. If an animatronic does make it to the door, they will actually jam it, so you won't be able to close it. Now, one gripe I have with this game is that almost every single camera on the second floor is useless and doesn't need to be looked at. You essentially just need to make sure you stop the animatronic from coming down the elevator while simultaneously checking the light from time to time. I don't think that this game had enough solid mechanics to keep the gameplay interesting for very long, and I felt this caused it to get pretty stale very quickly. Another problem I had with this game is something I mentioned earlier, and that is that the game does not do a very good job of explaining what you're supposed to do. Not only does the phone guy sound like he's constantly forgetting his lines while recording, but the phone audio is just so quiet that you can barely hear him. And when you're in the cameras, like, you literally cannot hear him at all. Now the game does feature subtitles, which I'm grateful for, but during most of the nights you don't even have time to read it because you're too worried about the animatronics. Now I wouldn't say this game has horrible gameplay, especially considering that this is one of the developer's first games and he was only 13 years old when he made this game according to the wiki, which is just very impressive to me. Like, that doesn't even make sense. However, there's just not enough there to fully grasp me, and with the sometimes inconsistent feeling mechanics and just the poor introduction of the gameplay itself, I feel that this game is pretty lacking in this regard. The setup for Jolly's is that you play as a security guard who has begun his job at Jolly's Fantasy World, a restaurant that was created by CEO Kevin Johnson as an attempt to compete with Circus Baby's Pizza World. The game is tied to the Five Nights at Freddy's canon and is stated in the paycheck that this game takes place all the way in the year of 2017. Other than this brief story introduction, there are also 5 minigames. The minigame for night 1 has the player control Jolly in a FNAF 3 style minigame. Also similar to FNAF 3, you start on the main stage and walk around the pizzeria until you eventually stumble across the parts and service room. Here you will find a spirit who tells you to follow them, leading you down a secret room hidden in front of the main stage before the minigame ends. The Night 2 minigame again has you playing as Jolly, beginning on the main stage. However, this time there is an audience of children. After roaming around the pizzeria for a little bit, you will find yourself in a back room that shows what appears to be the puppet slumped over, accompanied by text that says, "It's okay." Upon leaving the room, a man in a blue shirt runs up to Jolly and the minigame cuts to black. The Night 3 minigame spawns us in a party room full of children, and after exploring the pizzeria for a little while, we stumble across the man in the blue shirt, who is surprised to see us, and similar to the last night's minigame, runs up to us before the minigame cuts to black. For the 4th night, we spawn in the same place as Night 3 and once again walk towards the same room as last time. After entering this room, we see a different blue shirted man who quickly runs out of the room as soon as we enter. He runs into the room with the children partying, and after entering the room to catch him, he runs up to you and once again ends the minigame. Now, what does this all mean? Well, I honestly couldn't tell you. I'm definitely not a person you should be looking at when it comes to decrypting all the deep lore in these games. However, what I can tell you is I think it's good that the developer at least took the time to incorporate these minigames, and I like to see that the game is trying to tell its own unique story. I'm pretty excited to talk about the visuals in this game because I think it's one of the game's strongest aspects. Just like the original FNAF games, this game was created in Click Team Fusion, which if you guys know anything about that engine, it is extremely limited and requires a lot of different tricks in order to make the game appear as if it's in first person and all that kind of stuff. And I think that this game does a really good job at that. While it doesn't have the same polish that Scott's games do, I still really think the environments, along with the animatronics, look above average in comparison to most fan games, when taking into account when the game came out. The office has a very dark and lonely vibe which sets the mood for the whole game, and I think the other rooms in the building do a more than passable job of representing what they need to. This game also has a very cool aesthetic, and while being very obviously inspired by its sister location, it still helps give the game its own unique identity and feel. Another section of the visuals the game absolutely nails is the mini-games. They do a perfect job of replicating the mini-games seen in FNAF 3, and when looked at side by side, it's hard to even spot the difference. This isn't to say it's all good, however, as there is one section of the visuals I feel like the game is severely lacking in, and that is the jump scares. While not being the worst, I just feel like they needed to be a lot faster to be scary. The animatronics kind of just slowly swing in front of your face without any real unique animation, and while being paired with this not so scary noise, it just makes the whole thing feel underwhelming. Again, I do want to reiterate here though that the developer was only 13 years old when he made this, so the fact that he could even pull off modeling these animatronics and animating them is already extremely impressive, so huge props to him. That's about everything I have to say for Jolly 1, so let's move straight on to Jolly 2. Jolly 2 was released on December 2nd of 2016, only 2 months after the release of Jolly 1, which is absolutely insane. This game, opposed to the normal restaurant location, takes on a new setting in the form of a cargo ship, where we will need to defend not only against animatronics from Jolly's fantasy world, but also the 4 main animatronics from Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Starting off with the gameplay, in this game we are once again a night guard, with our task this time being to watch over the animatronics who are being taken across the ocean via a cargo ship in order to be investigated. This game has 2 different sections of gameplay, the office section and a fun with plush trap style mini game. So I will first start by talking about the main part of the game, which is the office gameplay, and then I will go over the fun with plush trap style mini game, which is titled Time to Sleep. Now right off the bat, I just want to start this section off by saying that this gameplay is so much better than the first game in my opinion, as it brings the scale down a lot and is a much more simplified gameplay loop. Gone are the excessive amounts of cameras and overly complicated maps. In this game we are just placed in an office similar to FNAF 1. There is a door to our left and a door to our right, a monitor in front of us, and some pipes behind us which we can turn around and look at. You will need to use the monitor to see where the animatronics are in the cargo ship, and will have to shock them if they're getting too close to your office. The shock does need to recharge however, so if you use it at a bad time, you will have to wait for it to recharge, which could potentially get you killed. Anyways, shocking the animatronics does slow them down, but it does not stop them, and they will still make their way right outside of your doors. Once outside of your office doors, you will need to wait for them to disappear from that camera, and that means that they are standing at your door. Similar to Jolly 1, there are no lights for these doors, so you will have to base when you will use your shock button on what you have seen in the cameras. Also, I have been calling them doors, but there is actually no door there, and the button is actually another shock button, which will shock the animatronic trying to enter your office. This shock also needs to recharge, and the recharge time is actually pretty long, so if you accidentally use it before the animatronic enters the doorway, it could easily get you killed. Unlike the shock on the cameras, this shock will actually send the animatronic back to where they originally started, so after you catch them trying to enter your office, you just basically send them all the way back. There is also the pipe mechanic, which essentially works as a quick way to disable your shocking abilities. Every once in a while you will hear steam leaking out of a pipe, which will shut off your ability to shock anything. This will force you to exit the camera, turn around, and click on the pipe that is leaking in order to fix it, and this will return your ability to shock the animatronics. This gameplay, like I said earlier, just works so much better than the first game. I feel like this game gives you way more time to breathe while also making sure that you are focusing and paying attention throughout the whole night. Forcing the player to know by the cameras when the animatronics are at the door tests your memorization and ability to keep track of every single animatronic in the building at once, and at times led to some horrifying moments where I wasn't sure if an animatronic was at the door or not, and needed to make the risky decision whether or not I should use my shock, knowing there would have been a chance I used it too early and would have had to wait to recharge it again. One thing I feel like the nights needed though was some variety. The game pretty much throws all the animatronics at you on the first night, and you are never introduced to any new threats as you progress. This causes the gameplay to start feeling stale after around the 3rd night, similar to the first game, and I just feel like the developers should have thrown in a surprise animatronic on the later nights just to make things a little bit more intense. Another thing I feel like this game is lacking is uniqueness across the different animatronics in the game. While there are 6 animatronics in total, they all behave in the exact same way other than their pathing, and this makes them all feel the same. One of the things I feel like made the Five Nights at Freddy's gameplay so great is the management of different animatronics who all require different ways to fend them off, with more being added as the nights progress. But sadly in this game, that is nowhere to be found, and you will most likely not even be paying attention to what animatronic is after you, as it doesn't matter at all which animatronic it is and only matters where they are in the building. Next up, I'm going to quickly talk about the time to sleep minigame that you have to play after every single night. Think of this as the equivalent to Fun with Plush Trap. However, in this minigame you are trying to fill up your sleep meter before the clock reaches 0. You do this by staying at your bed to charge up the meter. However, you will need to run and check these 2 doors to flash Foxy with your flashlight. This game mode tests your patience a lot, as succeeding in this game mode requires you to trust your gut and know when it is a good time to wait and when you need to run up and flash Foxy. There is some randomness to knowing which door Foxy will be in, but I think this is fine. It adds to the tension that is built up when you know that you have already been in the bed for a while and can't afford the extra seconds you would lose by going to the wrong door. One gripe I do have with this minigame is they just throw you straight into it after the first night. And while there are directions detailing what to do, they do not give you enough time to read them, which resulted in me getting jump scared before I even knew what was going on the first time I got here. I really think there should have been a tutorial screen before the minigame even started, like how Scott did it in the Fun with Plush Trap, but that's just a minor gripe, and after the first small death, I had a lot of fun with this minigame moving forward, and I thought it did a good job of keeping the gameplay fresh. The game opens up informing us that the year is 1985, meaning that this is a prequel to Jolly's 1. We are then shown a newspaper reading, 5 children have gone missing inside Freddy Fazbear's Pizza restaurant. The animatronics will be transferred and will be cargoed off to somewhere safe for further investigation. Like I said earlier, we play as a night guard in this game, tasked with staying up on this cargo ship with these animatronics to watch over them. Other than this short introduction though, the game doesn't outright tell us any more of the lore. However, it does contain a lot of minigames, with one after every single night, so let's look over those now. The first minigame opens up with us playing as the blue shirt guy who was in the Jolly 1 minigames. We can see there is a large sign up in the building that reads, "Bring your daughter to work day." A little strange how it's "bring your daughter to work day" and not just "bring your kid to work day," but this might have just been a slip up from the developer. Anyways, you roam around the building while you hear a voice in the background repeatedly saying, "I'm scared." And after walking around the pizzeria for a little bit, we eventually stumble across the purple man in a golden suit, luring away a child into the back room. Upon following him, we see the purple guy bring him into yet another room before closing the door and locking us out, as the minigame fades to black. The second minigame is pretty much identical to the first one, with the only variation being that there's a different child being lured by the purple guy. No, actually not just the second minigame. The third, fourth, and fifth minigame are all just variations of the first minigame, with a different child being in every single one. This felt extremely disappointing to me, as I felt like the developer just included these minigames to pad out time, and while I understand that this game was made in only the matter of 2 months, it just feels really cheap to reuse the same minigame so many times and make you play it every single time as well. This especially sucked because up to this point I was actually pretty invested in seeing what was gonna happen next. But as soon as I found out the minigames would all just be reskins of each other, that interest inside me died out and I wasn't really too interested in the story anymore. Luckily for me, however, there was a little bit more lore in this game after night 6, so let me show you that now. So first off, after night 6 we get to see a paycheck, and on that paycheck we can see that the character we are playing as is not the same character from Jolly 1, with this character being named Liam Smith. After being shown the paycheck, we then get to see a small credits section for the game with text that reads "The End." And after that text fades to black, we see Jolly's eyes light up from the darkness with text that reads "Bad Ending." If we go ahead and visit the extras menu in the game, however, and click on this secret little guy in the corner, we are taken to a sister location style minigame where we need to feed burgers to children. And after completing this long minigame, we get to walk into a building as Jolly. Here we find a girl wearing purple crying. She walks up to Jolly and hugs him when suddenly the purple guy runs out of a door and charges us. The screen then cuts to an arcade cabinet zooming out before the credits roll once again. We are then shown Jolly again, similar to the bad ending. However, this time his eyes aren't lit up and we are given text that reads "True Ending." I'm guessing this means that Jolly Spirit is freed in the canon ending of this game, as it bears so many similarities to the Five Nights at Freddy's 3 bad and good endings. And it was at this point where I was very lost on the story, so I can't really give you my full thoughts on what I think about the lore, but I do think it was cool that the developer did decide to include a second ending to the game. However, the amount of work you have to do to achieve this ending just to see a 2-second shot of Jolly with the lights in his eyes off isn't really worth it in my opinion. Anyways, that's all I have to say about the story, so now let's move on to the visuals. The visuals are very interesting in this game to me. While some of it is definitely a step up from the previous game, other parts of the game almost look worse than the first one. This could be due to the game being rushed or just the developer struggling with the new setting, but I feel like some of the rooms in this game don't look as good as the first one. The office in particular doesn't really look as good as it did in the first one, and is a pretty uninspired design in my opinion. I will say though that the animatronic models have improved a lot from the first game. I'll put a screenshot of both games' animatronics on screen to compare now, and you can see that the developer was able to execute the animatronics proportions a lot better in this game. And while I do think the models could still use some work and aren't up to the par that Scott's models were on, they do a good enough job of representing the animatronics, and my small nitpicks with their designs aren't very noticeable when you're actually playing the game. The biggest upgrade by far to the visuals, however, is the cutscenes and the animation. There are 2 brief cutscenes in this game. The one that we see during the intro to introduce the newspaper, and this one right here of Foxy running around the cargo boat to introduce us to the time to sleep minigame. These cutscenes, while short, are really cool and got me really excited to play the game. The animation on the cutscenes also looks pretty smooth, and I like how the one with Foxy is from his POV. It kind of reminds me of that FNAF Plus teaser, if you guys know what I'm talking about. And other than that, this game also features some small animations in the form of this running animation that plays when clicking on the monitor. I think it looks pretty cool when you're actually going up to the camera. The only thing I think that looks a little off is when leaving the camera, it will just play in reverse instead of having its own animation for running back. Other than this though, it was a cool idea to feature animation, and I think it makes the game feel a little bit more alive. One last thing for the visuals I would like to touch on is the jump scares, which have not really improved much from the first game and still feel very slow and just not really scary at all. Especially the Freddy one. His head just kind of slides into frame while the out of sync jump scare noise plays. Overall, I can say that this game makes a slight improvement in terms of visuals over the first game, but nothing you will really notice, and the visual jump isn't as huge as the leap from say Jolly 2 to Jolly 3. So why don't we waste no more time and jump straight into Jolly 3 Chapter 1. Jolly 3 immediately opens up with this beautiful menu screen, which is quickly followed by this sick intro cutscene that shows us a car driving around at night. We then see somebody running into the Jolly's location, where we see a withered version of Jolly open his eyes. Here you can probably already see a sneak peek at the visual upgrade that the series got since the second game. With this game being released 8 months after Jolly 2, the extra time the developer got to craft this one definitely shows. I also want to say this intro cutscene had some really sick music accompanying it, and it was just such a great way to start the game, immediately getting me hyped to see what's coming. So let's go straight into the gameplay. Immediately loading into night 1, we can see that this game strays away from the typical FNAF style gameplay and instead chooses to follow what Sister Location did with its design, where it adopts a more linear experience, sacrificing replayability in order to create more story-driven cinematic experiences. That is not to say that this game doesn't have office gameplay, however. Every night will first have you survive in the office before moving on to a unique task for the night you are on. The office gameplay is very complicated, but let me try my best to explain it to you. Like every other FNAF game, you have a camera where you're able to look at each room in the building. Each room has its own fan that you will need to keep track of. These fans will break during your shift and will need to be repaired. However, the game will not tell you which fan is broken. This means that if one breaks, you will need to search through the cameras in order to find the one that needs fixing. Once you have found the one that needs to be fixed, you need to click this repair button right here on your camera. The fan breaking is a major disturbance throughout the night, as it will cause you to lose your vision, making it very hard to see anything. There is also a maintenance tab that you can access by pressing this wrench in the left corner, and in this screen you are shown your oxygen levels as well as your gas supply. Your oxygen levels will slowly go down as a fan breaks, and it is this screen that you will use in order to charge it back up. The gas supply is also able to stop working similar to the fans, and will require you to open this screen to repair it. As for the office design, think of it similar to FNAF 2. However, instead of having a mask, you have this lever in front of you. And whenever an animatronic appears in front of your office, you will need to just pull it down to release gas on the animatronic and scare it away. This will shortly cause you to lose a little bit of oxygen, but it is required to get rid of the animatronics. Also similar to FNAF 2, there are two lights you will need to check on your left and right, these being windows that have Tweety and Maxie in them. Whenever Tweety or Maxie shows up at the windows, you will need to keep the light on them in order to stop them from killing you, and this is kind of similar to the window mechanic from Jolly 1. I think that this is definitely the best office gameplay in the series, as it not only makes you utilize every single camera by implementing the repairing fan mechanic, but also takes notes from games like Five Nights at Freddy's 2 with the way you will be juggling between stopping the animatronics who are in your office, fending off against animatronics on your left and right, and also trying to monitor the cameras. The game also throws in phantom animatronics who will disable your fans, and I think this is a perfect addition. By doing this, the developer was able to keep the gameplay fresh by having different animatronics show up as you progress, to keep it from ever getting stale. This also helps each animatronic feel more unique from one another, with not all of them doing the exact same thing. This mechanic alone solves two huge issues I had with the previous games, so it's good to see the developer learning from his mistakes of his past games and making improvements upon them. I do think this is a lot of mechanics to be thrown onto you at once, and it is very overwhelming, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually not that bad and plays pretty well. Anyways, like I said previously, after each night there is more to the mission in the form of a kind of mini game, similar to the breaker room minigame in Sister Location or like the Springlock section, things like that. So after night 1, we walked through the hallway in front of us, and we were told by the phone guy to enter the door on the left. Here we are told we need to find something quickly and get out, or we will be dead. Upon entering the door, we make our way into this storage type room, and we need to look around the room with a flashlight in order to find the safe that the phone guy wants to see. And after clicking on the safe, this happens. First time around, this was a really cool moment for me for sure. It actually scared me as I was not expecting it at all, and I thought this would just be a small little hunt for a box, not an actual full level. Moments like these where you are going in absolutely blind are when the linear style of FNAF gameplay works best in my opinion. But I will later explain why this section went from being one of my favorites to my least favorite in the entire game. So after the lights shut off, we are told we need to use our phone to send the phone guy a port number, and this starts the next section of the minigame, where we will need to make a pathway from one door to another using this app on our phone. It's a pretty simple minigame that reminds me a lot of the hacking minigames from BioShock. If you guys ever played that, you'll know what I'm talking about. However, just like in the breaker room minigame from Sister Location, you will need to flip down your phone and flash the animatronic trying to kill you to keep them away. It seems simple enough, but this was actually the most frustrating part of the game for me. For some reason, no matter what I did, I would always die. I tried barely flashing him, I tried not flashing him at all, and trying to complete the puzzle quickly. I tried absolutely spamming the flashlight on him for him to get back, and just nothing worked for me, until eventually I just lucked out and got through it. Not to mention that every single time you die on this part, you have to redo the whole thing where you walk through the door, find the safe, watch the cutscene where the lights go off again, and that is why this was my most hated section in the game. One upside I will give to this minigame, however, is that unlike the time to sleep minigame in Jolly 2, this game actually gives you time to read the directions before just throwing you in, which is yet another improvement made since the first two games. Anyways, after finishing the hacking on the phone, all we need to do is click on the safe and enter the code that the phone guy tells us. After this, the safe opens up and grants us a book, which concludes our first shift. After this, we are taken to a minigame section, like the actual pixelated minigames, not like I don't know why I called the other ones mini games. This is gonna get confusing. But the actual pixelated mini games. However, I'm gonna skip over these for now, and I'm just gonna go over every single night, and then I'll comment on the mini games during the story section. So let's move right on to night 2. After the office gameplay for night 2, it's time for our next task the phone guy asks from us. So we enter the hallway once again that's right in front of us, and this time enter through the door right in front of us labeled assembly line. Once again, we are told we need to find a safe, and I know this is the gameplay section and not the visual section yet, but right here I just want to say that the environments in this game just look so good. And when looking back on the previous games, it's a night and day difference with how much better they look. Anyways, after we find the safe, he tells us the code once again, and we get out with these papers harm-free. Just kidding, once again, of course something bad happens. This time it is the lights shutting off. We then hear a girl talking to us, which is very similar to Sister Location. I mean, it's cool that the game has voice acting, but this just feels like the developers were taking a little too much from Sister Location at this point. After she's done with her monologue though, the lights come back on and we see the 4 original animatronic heads on the ground, before the screen fades to black, concluding shift number 2. And then after this we get to the next mini game, like the pixelated mini games. And again, I'm not going to cover these right now. I'm going to do those during the story section, so we're going to skip over that. However, since right now we're talking about the gameplay, I just want to quickly say that the mini games in this game have a lot more gameplay than in Jolly 2, and are not just repetitive games of watching the purple guy lure another child or something like that. And some sections of the mini games are actually challenging and not just there to be a sort of cutscene. Okay, so now for shift 3. We again start in the office gameplay, and this time we are introduced to another phone guy named Cassette Man, who tells us that the jolly suit in the back shouldn't be worn, and also that tomorrow is Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, which is something that we saw in the previous game's minigame. Once we complete our 6-hour office shift, we then walk into the hallway in front of us, and again we are meant to enter a door, this time it being the 3rd and final door on the right. However, once we click on the door to enter, we are jump scared by whatever animatronic this is, and I have to say that this was completely out of nowhere and actually made me jump when it happened. I really like this scene, as by now the game has already conditioned you to walk through these doors, and at this moment I had my guard completely down. Anyways, the game pretends you're dead for a little bit before the camera fades back in to reveal that you are in a new room, with this cool brief animation of us waking up. The girl continues talking to us for a little bit, and then our shift ends. Next up is shift 4, and here we find out that the phone guy actually knew that that animatronic was there and didn't warn us. The gameplay is more of the same for the office, however we now have Phantom Foxy on the cameras, and the animatronics are a lot more aggressive. After the office sections ends, we return once again to the room with the 3 doors. This time, however, we actually get into the room on the right without being jump scared. Here we are tasked for the 3rd time with finding a safe. However, this time before we can find it, the security system is detected and red lights start flashing. Here we need to open our phone once again, and this time we need to play a typing game while also trying to keep this animatronic away. And let me tell you guys, this is one of the most stressful sections in the game, because even if you're good at typing, they throw all these different symbols in there to try to slow you down, and you will need to periodically close your phone to make sure the animatronic Maxi will go away and not kill you. I don't think this was as hard as the other puzzle in the game, but was still very stressful, and it made for a really cool minigame in my opinion. The idea to make this section a typing section I also thought was a really good idea. Typing is something that you can do fast, but when the game wants you to type everything exactly how it is on screen, it makes you have to slow down. And when under such high pressure situations, it leads to some frantic typing and high tension as the animatronic gets closer and closer. After completing the typing minigame, we open up the 3rd safe and this time receive a cassette, which wraps up our 4th shift. Finally, for night 5, it is more of the same office gameplay, only with increased difficulty. And at this point the office section became stupidly difficult and I was absolutely sweating trying to complete it. Upon completing the office section though, we get to move into the room with the 3 doors for one last time. Here we are instructed to go straight forward, and after doing so, a cutscene is triggered, revealing that chapter 2 for the game will be coming soon. So that's everything for the gameplay, now let's look into the story. Now for the story in this game, I have to admit this is where the story completely lost me. Up to now I had been trying to follow along with everything that was happening, but from here on out I was just very confused. So for this section I'm just gonna do my best, so bear with me guys. I'm not Matt Pat out here, I don't really know how to figure out all this lore, but just bear with me, So for the night 1 minigame, we are shown the blue shirt guy and the purple guy entering the Five Nights at Freddy's 1 location. They walk around for a bit while the purple guy gives the blue shirt guy a tour around the place. Blue shirt guy then asks what the secret room over there is, to which the purple guy responds by saying, "There are animatronics in there. They were used. One of their names is Jolly, and I don't know who the other one is." We are then set free to roam around the pizzeria, and after following the purple guy into the parts and service room, he asks us, "Why are you here?" He refers to us as Eric, and then he tells us that he needs to tell us something. He leans in and tells Eric that no one will know about this room's existence. Eric simply replies just saying, "Yes, boss," and this concludes the first minigame. The second night's minigame starts with the blue shirt guy talking to his daughter about how excited she is to visit Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. They then drive over to the location and pull up into the front entrance. Here we also find out that this little girl's name is Zoe. The blue shirt guy then walks into the restaurant before coming back out and telling the girl to stay as far away from the pizzeria as possible, no matter what. The screen then fades to black, and this is the end of the minigame. Night 3's minigame starts where the second one left off. We control Zoe this time and enter the pizzeria only to be met with a dark environment only lit up by Zoe's candle. Zoe walks around the pizzeria for a little bit before being ran up on by the purple guy. The minigame then cuts to Zoe crying and we see dialogue between 3 characters. And judging off the text color, I'm guessing it's just the blue shirt guy, aka Zoe's father, William Afton, or the purple guy, and Zoe. The blue shirt guy tells William Afton he needs to stop, and William just laughs it off, saying he's already dead inside and he will never stop, just being a complete total villain. And then there's a red slash effect across the screen, and William says that Zoe is dead. Zoe's father tries to stop William, but he can't because William is wearing the Golden Freddy suit we saw from earlier. At least that's what I assume because William had the suit in the previous minigame, but I could be wrong about this, so don't take that as a fact. And that is where that minigame ends off. And finally, Night 4's minigame, which is actually the final one, starts us off as the blue shirt guy once again. However, this time we are in a familiar place, the cargo ship from Jolly's 2. In this more gameplay oriented minigame, we essentially just need to sneak past these guards in order to get on the back of this truck. And upon entering the truck, the minigame will fade to black and end. Now, I don't want to comment on the actual story too much because again, I don't really know what's going on. Like, I don't really know why the blue shirt guy was on the boat from Jolly's 2 even though he was just at the pizzeria. I don't know the timeline, there's not like any dates. So yeah, I'm not going to really go into the details, but I do want to give a little bit of praise for a second. Not necessarily to the story in the minigames, but just the minigames themselves. They are now so much more unique and diverse. They are not only full of different story beats, but also dialogue scenes with multiple characters. They are also a lot more cinematic now by featuring music, and also use things like having the music cut out or dramatic shadows to add to a specific scene. Other than that though, I don't have a whole lot else to say, so let's move right on to the visuals for Jolly 3. Not including Jolly 3 Chapter 2, Jolly 3 has to be by far the best visuals in the series. The game has made so many improvements over the first 2 installments in almost every way that I honestly don't even know where to begin. Firstly, the main menu and HUD elements of the game are an immediate leap forward in terms of how professional they look. Like, this has got to be one of the best menus in a fan game. And not only that, but it runs flawlessly. This also translates to the camera systems in the game. I especially like this effect when you get a signal is lost in the camera. Compare this to the other signal loss effects in the other games, and again, it's just night and day how much better it actually looks. Everything just feels so snappy when you're using the cameras thanks to the audio design and effects that play. And not only that, but the actual graphics themselves have improved so much. The models for the animatronics look a lot less blocky now and again have much better proportions, especially when compared to the first game. The animatronics also now feature withered designs that help bring out how scary they are just that much more. The environments also feel so much more vast and real, despite this game using the highly limited Click Team Fusion still. I would say this game is not too far off from the official FNAF titles in most aspects, because that's just how good they actually look. With every single room in this game, you can tell that the developer took his time to make them look good. Even the random cameras that you won't even be looking at look great. And some are even animated with these shadows of the fans so you can see when they have shut off or not, which I thought was just such a nice detail that he did not need to add. The pixelated mini games, like I talked about previously, are also a huge leap up visually, and now have their own distinct style that helps set them apart from the Scott games. My only wish is that Ivan G maybe took a little bit less inspiration from Sister Location, and instead made the aesthetic of this game something completely new. But I understand that that's what he was going for this title, and I can respect it. Also, I can happily say that the jump scares in this game actually do look good and are no longer just those slow, boring animations. That being said, that's all I have to say on the visuals for Jolly 3, so now let's go on to the final game in this video, Jolly 3 Chapter 2. And finally, last but not least, we have Jolly 3 Chapter 2, which was released June 11th of 2018. This game starts off where Jolly 3 Chapter 1 left us, heading to the underground facility under the Jolly's factory in order to find possible animatronics. First up is the gameplay. The game opens up with us going down an elevator very similar to Five Nights at Freddy's Sister Location, and upon leaving the elevator, we enter a completely dark room. Here we must use our phone flashlight or night vision in order to look around, and we are also equipped with a map of the location. In this map, there is a marker of where we need to go, signified by this blue dot. We basically need to click around and free roam around this area until we are able to make it to the blue ping. After arriving at this blue ping on our map, we are told that we can actually not go into this room yet, and we will need a key card by working as an intern at the facility. So basically we need to go be a night guard once again for 5 nights in order to get the key card. And I know this isn't the story section, but like, come on, what is that? Like, you have to work 5 nights to get the key card? Like, I don't know, it just seems like too plot driven, but anyways. This is where the game truly starts, as it is our first night of 5. However, before going into the office gameplay, I just want to make it clear now that there is 2 sections to the office gameplay. There's the main office section gameplay that you are seeing now, and then once it reaches 6 AM, there's an additional night that you'll have to do that has its own unique gameplay, so I will go over those now. Once you arrive at the office, you will receive a phone call from a brand new voice, and this voice actually belongs to Kevin Johnson, who, if you remember from the previous game, is the CEO of Jolly Entertainment. This is when we learn about the animatronics we will be going up against, Withered Jolly and Withered George. To fend off against the 2 animatronics, you will need to watch over them on your monitor, similar to the other games, and once they reach your door, you will need to turn around and use a jammer kind of thing like in Jolly 2. The gameplay is not as simple as this, however, and actually gets a lot more complicated. Basically though, when turning around, you are able to access the radar, the jammer, and the maintenance panel. The maintenance panel is similar to FNAF 3 and will be used to reboot things that will go offline in your office. The jammer, of course, jams the animatronics, sending them back. However, just like in Jolly's 2, you can't spam it and it needs to regen. The radar helps you find the location of the animatronics, but also needs to be rebooted after using it. And it takes a really long time, so like you cannot like just use this thing at will, like you need to actually conserve it. And that is my alarm going off. I have been up for like 36 hours making this video. Wow. Anyways, the gameplay is a little more in depth than this, but like you just heard my alarm and this video is already getting long, so I don't really want to talk about it for too long. But I do think these mechanics do work very good, and while I don't think it has the same qualities that made Chapter 1's office gameplay so stressful, I think it does do a good job of keeping the office gameplay engaging, even if it is just 2 animatronics you're going against. This game also has a thing where you will not be able to see if the animatronics are at the door. So once again, you will be flipping through cameras and memorizing animatronic locations in order to get through the nights. This, paired with the fact that the radar and jammer take so long to regen, lead to some of the most high tension moments in the series, where you will feel defenseless, and I think that's where the gameplay of this game shines the most. In between every night of the office, you will have to complete another phase of gameplay, and this phase of gameplay involves you decrypting files at your computer. There are 10 files total on your computer in front of you, and you will need to do one by clicking on the file and waiting for it to reach 100%. If the player is not looking at the computer, however, the percentage bar will not go up. To cause you trouble while you're trying to decrypt the files, there are old animatronics inside your home. These animatronics are withered versions of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. Wow. These animatronics are withered versions of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, and they are actually called the rusted animatronics, I believe. And they will attack you in a way that is very similar to FNAF 4. There are 3 places they can come from: the left door, the middle door, or the right window. And you can prevent these animatronics from killing you by going and checking on the door you hear making a creaking noise. Once you arrive at the door, you will need to listen for breathing just like in FNAF 4. And if there is no breathing, you can just lock the door. If there is breathing, however, you must shine your light to scare away any animatronic. You'll need to do this until all 10 files have been decrypted, and now that I think of it, it's pretty much a combination of the breaker room from Sister Location and FNAF 4, so just think of it as that basically. Which I don't think is a bad thing. I like that this section of the game doesn't run on time and instead takes as long as it takes you to complete it. And I also think the breathing mechanics are a nice change of pace from the frantic camera scrolling and chaotic office nights. Night 5 changes it up once again, however. You are told that you need to go to the oxygen control room, and this begins another free roam section similar to the beginning of the game. This time things are different, however, because now George will be roaming around the building as you make your way to the oxygen control room. You will need to avoid George by listening for breathing or checking your night vision on your phone to know when he is in front of you. If George is in front of you, you will need to hold shift to cover your mouth and quiet your breathing until George walks away. Once you have made it to the oxygen control room, you will find yourself in yet another office room. This office gives you a lot of things to worry about, like a camera system, a door, a window in front of you, and a light switch. And this office is just very similar to the one in Jolly's 1. There's also another panel on your right, which will need to be filled up like the decrypting files step previously seen in the last section. And you must listen for George and Jolly while you attempt to fill up the oxygen meters. George and Jolly actually do have audio cues in this section, unlike any other parts in the game, which means you can remain on the oxygen panel until you hear a sound and then quickly bring the panel down and flash the light. If you hear another sound after they have already appeared at the window though, that means they're at your door and you must close it immediately. This section isn't very hard at all, but I still think it was pretty cool to include, and it's a cool callback to Jolly 1. The mechanics, while not anything super impressive, work for this section, and I don't really have anything negative to say about it. After finishing this part though, we are sent back into the free roaming section for the final time. However, this time we are able to actually go into the room that we could not get into at the start of the game, because of course now we have the key card from working our 5 nights. After finally making it to the door, the player unlocks it using the key card they earned, and upon opening the door they head into an elevator. Once the elevator is finished going down, the doors open and the lights turn on in the room one by one, revealing the animatronic we had been searching for the whole time to be Springtrap. Now, while frustrating at times, I do commend this game for its willingness to change the formula many times over the course of its runtime. I mean, you had the office sections, the decrypting files sections, the free roam. This game just had a lot of variety when it came to the gameplay, which I felt made it the second strongest entry in the series when it comes to gameplay, only shortly falling behind Chapter 1. Anyways, that's everything I have to say about the gameplay, so let's talk about the story. Again, I know I've said this every single time, but I'm just going to talk about how the game presents the story to you, because the lore, again, I don't really know what's going on in the lore. First off, I just want to say that in this chapter we are given some great performances by multiple voice actors who played the different phone guys, and I think they just absolutely killed it. Especially Kevin Johnson's voice actor, who is just so comically over the top in his phone calls, and just think it adds a lot of charm to the game.
My name is Kevin Johnson, the CEO of Jolly Entertainment. And welcome to the Jolly Entertainment Underground Facility, housing one of the most advanced electronic robots ever.
The game also features these audio logs that give you more insight into the story after every single night, which I thought was a pretty cool addition for the people who actually want to know about the lore. And they also give you the option to skip it, which is nice. And if that wasn't enough, the game once again features multiple endings, with the good ending only being achievable through a series of Easter eggs and completing minigames. Now, I didn't do it myself because I didn't know how to when I played through the game, but from watching other people do it, it's a lot like the Happiest Day from Five Nights at Freddy's 3, with how you needed to do a few Easter eggs and minigame challenges to trigger the true ending. And again, I think it's really cool that the dev goes out of his way to add these hidden endings that he knows most of the player base won't even see. So huge props to him for putting all this work in. You can tell he's really dedicated to this story he's trying to tell. Anyways, that's all I got for the story this time, so let's talk about the visuals. Now finally, we are here at the end and we get to talk about the visuals in this game. And since this game is very similar to Jolly 3 Chapter 1 in terms of visuals, I wanted to instead solely dedicate this section to the animatronic designs. The first animatronic design that I want to bring up is Jolly's. Throughout the series, we have seen him get slowly more withered throughout the night. However, now in this installment, Jolly is completely missing his head and instead has a human-like purple reddish face, which I just love so much. There's just something very eerie and weird about a real-life head being visible in these fan games, as it's common for them to stray far away from showing any humans. As for Withered George's design, however, I feel like it could have used some more work. The model just feels sort of plain to me and doesn't really look like a real animatronic. I think it has something to do with the fact that you can't see how his jaw is connected, as there is no endoskeleton in his mouth, but I'm not sure if that's it. The rusty versions of the main 4 animatronics do look really good though in my opinion, and they are definitely a step up in quality from the last time we saw them in Jolly 2, before they were the rusted versions. And while not being the most insanely high detailed models of animatronics, I think these guys look very creepy when you're actually playing the game and seeing them in action. Speaking of seeing them in action, the jump scares in this game are really good. They are super fast and in your face, similar to Chapter 1, which I thought was just a huge step up from the past games once again. So guys, that concludes the review of every Jolly game in the series. This is by far my longest video to date, so if you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching. You guys have no idea how much it means to me to know that people are actually viewing my videos. This took an extremely long time to make. I've literally been up for like 30 something hours now and I still gotta edit this. So if you've made it this far, please consider liking and subscribing. And with that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. Once again, thank you so much to Monster Legends for sponsoring this video. Make sure you download the game now and claim your free starter pack, which will help you get a head start and speed up your leveling process.